Hi folks, Will LR Workshop coming up. We're going to see how to spot a genuine swivel housing, what kind of parts the British Army use on their wolves, and what this has all got to do with poisonous frogs. So we'll just jump straight in, how to identify a genuine swivel housing. Genuine one? Well, actually I've tricked you and I've put these around the wrong way. So this one's a genuine one here. That's a genuine one. This one's a county parts. Would you believe that? County parts still going. Haven't seen those for a while. So this is a genuine one, this is an aftermarket one, these are new, and these two are used ones that I believe to be genuine. We'll have a look at those in a minute. Anyway, so basically, there's two things to look out for to spot a genuine swivel housing. First one is the collar or the shoulder down here. So if you can see there, there's two different machine types, machine surface finishes. It's kind of smooth all the way down here, and then you've got some grooves along here that you can feel with your thumbnail. That's the main telltale sign. You can see that when this is on the vehicle. So I'm assuming you're going to run out now and go and check your own balls on your vehicle. The second thing is the stamping here. Usually something like GET, something like that. And those are basically the hallmarks of a genuine swivel housing. If we look at the aftermarket one, we'll see on here, this is a smooth surface all the way down. There's no difference in the machining across the surface there. And there's no markings or coding around the edge here. In terms of any other differences, I've not really found anything other than there's a bit of dimensional difference. So we've got genuine on the left. You can see there's a lot more material here than there is on these parts. However, swivel balls tend to fail around here. This is commonly where they tend to fail. I mean, this is the narrowest point. All the load from the axle is here, and all the weight and all the weight is transmitted through here to basically sit on the bottom bearing. So they tend to fail around here. If you've been on YouTube for a while, watching YouTube for a while, you may remember that big failure for Grizzly and Bear, their channel they had in the high mountains in a snowy conditions. Theirs failed around here. It's split. So it's interesting that there's less material up around the housings here, but it's potentially more critical that the quality of material around here is more important. But basically they're very, very similar. You can see there's a slight difference in the shoulder on the genuine one, and then there's the aftermarket. Yeah, internally very difficult to tell because they've both got the same kind of machining down here for the CV joint. It's funny the genuine one's got some chunks missing from it. How that's happened, I don't know. But these are basically cast and then machined. I'll tell you how I know about this in a minute, but it's very interesting. I wonder why there's a difference. Why there's a difference. The only thing I can think is that there's these, how they're made, they're cast, this is a casting, then I assume they're either milled or turned. And it may be the case that this finish is done first across the whole ball, and then the final machined finish is done down the ball and stops here. They don't bother doing the rest of it. So why on the aftermarket they would bother doing that, I don't really know. Completely different process. It's difficult to know. I don't know where this one's made. This genuine one is Turkey, supposedly. It says on there, it's 2018 vintage. Anyway, so there we go. That's how you spot a genuine swivel housing. Let's take a look at a few others. I've actually got a second genuine swivel housing, bought from a different supplier, but also 2018 made in Turkey. So here's another data point. This one's got a slightly weird finish on it. You don't really see manufacturers talking about this being a Teflon finish, the black coating anymore, because it's not. I don't know where the Teflon came from, but it's not a coating per se, it's a surface treatment, and it's called Nitrotech, and it was introduced partway through the 97 model year. They changed from chrome, and it's called Nitrotech. So it's kind of it's the chemical treatment of the surface that makes it go black. This one's a bit patchy. I'm not entirely sure why or how much that affects things. Anyway, you can see the machining on this genuine one. Similar sort of thing. And then this one's got a coding stamped in the top there. This is GES instead of GET. So these are pretty much same provenance, and so there is a bit of a difference with the stamping. Coming on to these two used balls, I believe these to be genuine. This one on the left is it's actually one I bought back from Blees. So this was from a 1997 model vehicle removed in 2007. You can see the wear on there, and that's probably consistent with a 10-year wear cycle. There's no real corrosion on it, or rust, or failure of it. A little bit there, but a lot of it's wear around where the seal runs. So this was replaced in 2007, and it doesn't have any stamping on it, but it does have the machine surface on it, and I would have thought this looks like a 10-year-old swivel, or a swivel with 10 years of use. So I can imagine, yeah, there's another vote for a genuine swivel with the machining there from the mid to late 90s. This one came from my 2003 Defender, and I took this off literally a few days ago, and this is fairly worn around here, fairly grooved, so the seal was leaking. Pretty much no corrosion. This is a 19-year-old vehicle now, no, 20-year-old vehicle, and it's only got 40,000 miles. I would say that, well, it's only had 11 years when I didn't own it, so I would say that's consistent with 40,000 miles or 10 years of probably hard off-road usage, a lot of dust. So I would expect this to be the genuine article. It has got a stamping on here that says 11, and there's a G up here, so there's a coding there, and then we can see there is machining on the neck there. Same sort of thing. So there's 4 data points there in terms of genuine swivel housings. I'm pretty confident that that is a good way of telling, that the machine surface is a good way of telling, or it's consistent from the advice I got. Where did I find that out? I found that out from an Army SNVE, or otherwise known as Safety Notice via Email. I'm not entirely sure that needs an acronym. Anyway, so that was released as part of a Freedom of Information Act. So let's go and have a read. And here is that SNVE, dated March 2019. So basically it says that 2 failures of swivel housings have happened, travelling cross country at low speed, and they identified that it was non-genuine Land Rover part that was the problem. And you need to identify and do corrective action because there are no warning signs of a potential failure. Here's a couple of photos of the failure, basically snapping around the collar just like it did on the Grizzly and Bear vehicle. Then goes on to say that they've got to turn all the vehicles red, and then if no vehicles have had the part replaced since July 2014, or if they've never had the part replaced or they haven't had it replaced since then you can put them back to task-worthy status. If they have had it replaced, then you basically have to inspect the swivel housing and inspect the neck here, and you're looking for the groove lines of a genuine part or the smooth shoulder here of the non-genuine part, which is the one that failed here. If this is all corroded and what have you, or muddy, and you can't find or definitively tell, then says you've got to strip down the vehicle and then look for serial numbers etched into the inner edge of the casting indicating a genuine part. Wheel stations with no serial numbers are genuine parts, which I believe is the part, the coding or the stamping that we saw, whether it was G and 11 or GET or GES. I believe that's what it's referring to. So they would have to replace all these parts basically on Wolf's sometime in 2019 to put them back fit for service. It talks about here that investigating with Babcock the procurement issue, ensuring that only the authorised approved supply is used. Users will only get Jaguar Land Rover endorsed parts once the investigation is completed. That is basically fully incriminating the fact that the Army is not using genuine parts or parts that are approved by JLR. Further investigation into quality will take place on the non-JLR parts. That's interesting, whether they've done some destructive testing or anything like that. So is it a surprise that the Army have been fitting aftermarket parts, not necessarily county, but aftermarket parts on their Defenders instead of genuine parts? There may be an assumption like the British military would always get the best equipment for their vehicles. Well, I mean, the British Army's been pretty strapped with cash last 10 years or so. So it doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, there's always been equipment problems in the army. But I've got a bit of knowledge that may add some context to this. So basically all the Wolf fleet is not generally maintained on an ongoing basis by ream or mechanics within the army. It tends to be outsourced. It used to be Abro, then it was the Defence Support Group, which got sold off to Babcock, who basically have currently got the contract. And what Babcock do is basically maintain the fleet and run everything on an ongoing basis. I don't know for certain. I can't say, obviously there's overseas bases. They're probably not going to ship everything back from Germany or from Kenya. They'll have local mechanics. And certainly in Belize and Batsub, there were contingents of ream based out there who did work on our vehicles a bit, but they mostly had, so the vehicle I inherited when it was 5 years old, the newer one, had been mostly fixed by local mechanics based in Batsub. But it's interesting, in the UK, there are quite a few Wolves that have civilian MOT histories on their military registration number. This is not after this is while they're still in the military. So I can only assume that maybe some of the smaller bases would send, if you're in the outer Senny Bridge in Wales or up in the north of Scotland somewhere, you might send your Wolves to go and get an MOT at a local garage or something as part of a roadworthiness check, rather than shipping them all the way to a larger military base. So I don't know how it works specifically, but what I'm generally get the theme of is that Babcock generally do the major overhauls and a lot of the maintenance work. The guy that was in charge of upgrading all the Defenders or modifying all the Defenders for Babcock got in touch with me a few years ago, and he had a problem because the way it's structured is the army outsource all the maintenance to Babcock. Babcock have the responsibility to repair and fix the vehicles, but Babcock don't buy their own parts. They don't procure their own parts. That is outsourced to another company called TVS, Supply Chain Solutions. The problem this guy was having, bear in mind this is the guy in charge of all Land Rovers for the army. The problem he was having was that he didn't know the quality of parts that were being supplied. He didn't know what was genuine and what was aftermarket being supplied. So they'd obviously been having some quality problems. Because bear in mind, in this massive chain of corporate outsourcing, the army don't know how to fix their vehicles. It's outsourced to Babcock. The Babcock supply that middle bit, which is, okay, we will make the vehicles correct for the specification you require, but Babcock don't really care. They just produce a list of parts. So Babcock will produce a list of parts required to modify or upgrade or repair the vehicles, and they will project manage that part of it. But then actually procuring and finding the parts, which takes a bloody long time, is outsourced to someone else who's a bit more specialist. The only way they knew what was the quality of parts being supplied or what had been supplied in the past, the guy was using LR Workshop for a part code that had been supplied at a specific price point. He was using the price point to find out what was the general kind of part that may have been supplied. If it was a 100 quid part, was it 50 quid part, was it a 10 quid part? From basically the data in LR Workshop, he could work out that may have been Brit part, may have been an OEM, may have been a genuine part from that. That's really interesting to hear. I was very surprised when I heard that, because you do originally think, well, the army's going to use good quality parts. Apparently not, because of this massive chain of outsourcing. The army haven't got a clue what's going on, basically, which is what has resulted in this kind of recall notice for swivel housings failing. So what has this got to do with poisonous frogs? Well, it did make me wonder. This is a bit of an arms race. How do you know genuine parts? Or rather, what is the incentive for an organisation that makes aftermarket parts from making you think the part is a genuine part? Well, pretty high. It depends on the part, obviously. But when there's something that, you may not have known about this, and I wouldn't have known about it were it not for the SNV coming out from the army and being released in the Freedom of Information Act, because I wouldn't have known that that was the telltale. You could be able to spot that there's a difference, but you wouldn't know that was the specific telltale. Presumably the army would have been notified by Jaguar Land Rover. That's one of the telltale signs. Now in biology, there's a thing called isomorphic mimicry. What that basically means is, if all poisonous frogs are red, predators learn that all poisonous frogs are red, and they then avoid all red frogs, and red frogs don't get eaten. If a non-poisonous frog evolves to have red skin colour, predators will avoid that also, and that frog will inherit the benefit of a poisonous frog, even though it's not poisonous. You see where I'm going with this? So what that means is, if you want to make your part look like a genuine part, you copy the things that make it a genuine part. So that's where it becomes a bit of an arms race. Now, I'm not going to say this is going to happen, but were a company somewhat unscrupulous and they wanted, and this became a well-known thing and everyone knew an easy way of spotting genuine swivel housings was with these techniques, then they could quite easily, presumably, change their manufacturing process, put the marks on, and then we would lose our ability to distinguish between the two. So there we go, isomorphic mimicry, that's the big word for today, or big phrase for today. It's not going to happen because no one really cares about Defenders these days. Certainly these things with Land Rover, well, they're being reproduced. I don't know if they were made in Turkey originally, but they certainly 5 years ago they would have been made in Turkey. Anyway, leave your comments down below. Hope that was interesting. I find it kind of fascinating. There's always interesting in the kind of stuff you can get from Freedom of Information Acts. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye for now.